Let's make sure we are in motion. It's 7 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first Wealth Wednesdays, hosted by Melvin and Abuife, your host here. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Always a pleasure to join you today. Thank you for the time. Today we're gonna spend it on the basics. All right. Today our goal is to start from the basics, and really that's the goal of this entire program, is to start from the basics today and really work our way up into more intricate financial themes. We'll have guests on. We'll have certainly individuals that can bring diverse ideas to what I have as well. So we definitely look forward to this. So as you can see there on the PowerPoint, today's focus is going to be building a solid financial foundation. Okay. Now, simply put, before we start to delve into more complicated factors, or at least more complicated concepts within finance, it's very important that you have the baseline done well enough, right? The baseline has to be done well enough for you to then know that you're prepared for what the next step looks like. All right. So we're going to focus today on building a solid foundation. And as always, if you have any questions or anything in the meantime, please go ahead and put it into the comments. We're starting slow, we're starting short. So today's not going to be excessively long. Today is going to be really just focused on getting the basics in motion. Okay. Alrighty, let's get going. So, again, I'm your host here at Wealth Wednesdays. I'm going to be your host for the next 3 months. And we're going to be exploring everything from budgeting, saving, emergency funds, understanding different kinds of debt, and then looking forward, preparing ourselves for what next week holds. So, let's dive right into it. Now, it has to be said that budgeting should be something that we need to find more games or more ways to really get budgeting as a core part of our childhood, especially in our community. It's kind of crazy that we get to adulthood before we start to really delve into what that looks like. So one of the biggest things that we can get from budgeting is financial freedom, right? And not in the frou-frou sense, but in the sense of having clarity in your thought as to what's coming next, as to what's in front of you, right? It's of course, it's helping you track what you're doing right now, but it's also really putting you in the best position as you look ahead, right? Looking to make sure that certainly all your dollars have a role, and that you're not putting yourself in a position where you could hurt your future self. All right. The reason we're doing all of this is so we don't hurt our future self. So we put our future self in the best position possible. So I have it here. I mean, a surprising statistic. All right. 61% of adults don't use a budget, which is crazy to think about. We have our phones now. We have laptops. We have tiny laptops that we can carry everywhere with us. We have our phones, which are pretty much overpowered laptops that we can take everywhere with us. So it's one of those things where we have all the little tools that we can utilize to really get ahead of this thing, but rarely do we actually do so, right? So it's important that we start to build a habit now, right? We start to build a habit now so that as we look ahead, we're putting ourselves in the best position possible, but then we're also creating habits that we can pass on to our kids. All right. It's by creating traditions, by creating habits that we're able to pass on, that we can, as a community, shift what that idea of generational wealth looks like. So what are some tools that you can start to utilize to get a hold of your budget and at least get a good sense of where you are and where you're going? I have Mint here. This is an older thing I've done. I have Mint here. Mint no longer exists, but Monarch Money, Monarch, MONARCH. Monarch Money is a great alternative to Mint. YNAB is also really, really good, but you can start simple, right? You don't even have to get crazy with it. You can start simple. You can start with just an Excel sheet, right? What is my expenses? What's my income? All right. At least I know what these look like. And then put an alarm on your phone, right? Every Friday before you get crazy with the weekend, you just review what you've done so far, right? What did we do for this week? How much did we spend? How much did we actually bring in? Okay, I know where we are now. It's the little wins in being able to keep track of your finances that will put you in the best position much more than anything else, right? It's like working out, right? If you're working out and you go to the mirror and you're expecting to see six pack, I mean, I suffer this, so. But if you're working out and you expect to see a six pack immediately 3 days after you started working out, you're gonna lose hope. All right. But if you find more creative ways of tracking what that success looks like, and don't rely on, okay, I want to see a six pack, but rather rely on, okay, I made sure I actually hit my 30 minutes today. Okay, I actually made sure that I did my back today. Okay, I made sure I ate properly today. Okay, I made sure I didn't eat that chocolate bar that was really calling to me. It's the culmination of all these things that actually lead us to a point where we're healthy. In the same sense, the same is applied to your finances, right? It's the little wins that accumulate that really lead you to that long-term success. So, what are some budgeting techniques that we've found or that could be really helpful, right? Zero-based budgeting. What that means is every single dollar must have a responsibility. This is something I do with every single one of my clients, right? When we're building out what the plan is or what the plan will be, I want to identify what does every single dollar look like. So if I tell myself, okay, at the end of every month for the last 6 months, I've been able to save $200, but yet I bring in $4,000. Well, 3,800 needs to be accounted for. Where did those dollars go? And for any dollar that can't be accounted for, we need to know why it wasn't put towards your future self. All right. So we have to look at this again, sort of like a game, but really in a way that we're able to find the little wins for ourselves. So the zero-based budgeting technique allows for you to identify the role for every single dollar you earn, thereby making sure that every expense that you have is accounted for. Now, the next one is, of course, the envelope system. And that is more, well, again, that I think I have a couple of people in my home that use that one. This is, of course, more so focused on having cash allocated for each goal that you have. As an adult, you can look at it like having an account for everything, right? So I have my expenses account, so I know what's going there, I know what's supposed to be there, nothing more, nothing less. I have my buying a house goal account, right? I have my, you have an account for each goal, and that's gonna allow for you to, again, it still boils down to the same goal from your zero-based budgeting, which is I need to know where everything is going, and I need to understand the role that everything had. All right. Now, the technique I advise for everyone, and it to me is a combination of the previous two we've talked about, is the 50-30-20 rule. All right. So that's saying 50% of your finances go towards your needs, 30% of it go towards your wants, and 20% of it goes towards your savings. Very simple, but it's very effective, right? So you see, you have the buckets, right? They fall into 3 little buckets. And so it's a bit of a combination of the zero-based budgeting, where every single dollar has a role, right? 50% here, 30% here, 20% here. But at the same time, you're putting them into their little buckets. So you know exactly what should be in that bucket. And if something is more or less, then you know how to adjust accordingly. So these are techniques that should really allow you and really help you get a handle on your finances, no matter how crazy it is. The more difficult part, I would say, is settling down to actually do the work, do the little things it needs, right? Do the little things that are needed. That's really where you find the difficulties, right? So it's more of a question to yourself: do I want to do this for my future self, and will my future self benefit from this? And more often than not, the answer is yes, right? All right. I want to make sure everyone can hear me. I want to make sure if you guys have any questions or anything like that, put it in the comments for me. But otherwise, we will keep proceeding. Okay. All right. Now, on our next slide, I wanted to talk about what I feel is the most important part of a plan. Your emergency fund is what defines your ability to survive the different cadences that come with life, the ebbs and flows of life. So, why is it so important? Well, it's your buffer against unexpected events, right? It's even more important than insurance is, because insurance, let's say, for example, disability insurance, right? The time it's going to take for you to apply for it, get the funding, all of that, you need money through that time. It's not like today you get in an accident, tomorrow money pops in your account. It's rarely ever that. So your emergency fund is the buffer between really chaos in your life and at least being able to have some peace of mind before all the other levers that you've built up in your life can be pulled upon. So before you dive into anything, before you dive into any of the investing, before you dive into any of these things, what allows for you to manage the risk of loss first, even before risk management tools like insurance, is your emergency fund. So set yourself a goal. Look to actually save about 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses and be honest with yourself. Don't say, oh, I spend this, oh, I spend this, I'll probably have money for this. No, be honest with yourself. What are my expenses monthly? What are the most important ones at least, sorry. The ones that I can't live without. Right? What are those important ones? And then start to build it. Nobody's asking you to put $3,000 in an account today, right? But if you do $300 every month for the next 10 months, you're going to get there, right? Nobody's saying that you're going to have an emergency come tomorrow, but you never know. And the older we get, the more people that are tied to our ability to survive these financial pitfalls, right? We're no longer the young men that we were when we were in the early 20s or 19 or 18, when you could just frivolously move around the world and something happens, you bounce back and you keep it pushing. We're no longer at that age anymore. We're now at a point where you probably have a wife or a husband, right? You probably have kids. You probably have jobs. You probably have other responsibilities. Your parents are older now. They're starting to depend on you a little bit more. You have siblings who might depend on you. So your ability to survive the ebbs and flows of financial stability, it's paramount. Right? Your ability to survive that is paramount. Right. So choose the right account to do this. We're currently in a high interest rate environment, right? If you're putting your cash under your mattress right now and and hoping to hide, you're going to be left behind by interest rates, by inflation. It's going to eat up your money. So while you're saving this significant sum for your emergencies, put that into a high yield savings account. You can use Marcus, you can use SoFi, you can use, there's a variety of them. Different rates, 4 point something, 5 point something. There's different rates, there's different ways. Do it according to your comfort. Speak with your advisor to make sure that it's part of the game plan. But make sure that every single one of your dollars is working, right? So even if it's your emergency savings, get that into a high yield savings account so you're at least keeping up with inflation through the year. Okay. And then lastly, automate your savings. I like anybody else. When that money hit my account, I ain't trying to hear it. I'm trying to go have a good time. All right. But the reality is, we need to pay our future selves first before we see that dollar. So automate your savings so that you're not putting yourself in a bad position. All right, get ahead of it. If you need to create a new account and have that money go right into the account straight from your paycheck, do so. If you need to, however you need to do it, that works for you, work with your advisor or work with your family, like whether it's your wife or whoever you share your finances with, and devise a strategy to automate your savings so that you're not hurting your future self, so that you're paying your future self first before you pay your current self. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm not seeing any comments so far. So I'm gonna assume you guys are all good. I'm gonna assume you guys are all good. But again, let me know if you have any questions or comments. Okay. Very good. Now, as we're doing all of this, we want to understand what is debt, first of all, and what is good debt versus bad debt, right? Debt in a lot of ways is of course future credit or credit now to be paid back later, right? So future dollars, using future dollars today. Now, if you're gonna use future dollars today, you have two ways you can use it, right? You can use it to satisfy your gratifications today and get no return from that, but at least have the immediate gratification that came from that. Or you can use that to really tackle and generate future wealth. All right. Now, life is what it is. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you don't ever get a credit card or et cetera, et cetera. Life does what it does. But understand fully well what you're getting yourself into when you take on these different kinds of debt. Right? Whether it's credit cards, whether it's payday loans, whether it's buy now, pay later loans like Klarna and Affirm and all these things. Understand where you are financially before you take on something like that, recognizing fully well that it has no real return in the future. Now, good debt, mortgages, right? Being able to invest in real estate because you're banking on the future growth of the underlying asset, right? Student loans, it's an investment on yourself. It's an investment on your skill set, right? You are your most important asset. So student loans are effectively an investment in your most important asset. This is why it's important that if you are going to take on student loans, please do a course or program that you can actually see the future return from. Don't just go pick a course because you want to pick a course. And then lastly, make sure you're investing in the future, whether that's stock investments, bond investments, REITs, whatever, cryptocurrency, however you want to go about doing that. Of course, consult with your financial advisor and devise a game plan to include investing in the future, whether it's, of course, that's through things like margin investing, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to get into the weeds, but again, this is really able for you to be able to understand and separate good debt versus bad debt. Okay. Now, what are some strategies for managing debt? First things first, I believe, is, again, going back to that budget. With that budget, you're able to assess what your debt looks like, right? You're able to list out all your debts. What are all the different people? And include the people you're owing. You might be owing that guy $200, or you might be owing this other person $100. Include all of it. All right. Maybe theirs doesn't have interest, but include all of it. The goal is to have a clean slate by the time you're done tackling your debt. Okay. Then decide what method you want to go with. The avalanche method looks at your highest interest, your highest interest debt first, right? Because that accumulates the most, right? And so that's the goal of that, is to try and tackle your high interest rate debt and tackle that before it accumulates future interest at a higher rate than what you're paying off. Or you could use the snowball method, The snowball method is looking at giving you those wins, right? So it's tackling your smallest debt and then building up, right? So you're knocking off the smaller ones, you're getting those wins, and so you're seeing it drop off, and you're building up. Finding a balance between tackling high interest debt, but also finding the little wins by tackling the smaller debt. That's up to you and your advisor to decide. But it's important to find a balance in doing both, or just pick one, but follow through. Okay. Now, make sure you're making your minimum payments on these, and then as you're starting to knock off debt, start to increase what you're paying towards these so you can knock them off even quicker. And again, by doing it this way, by having a system, by having a way of keeping track, you get the benefit of celebrating your milestones, right? You get the benefit of seeing your progress and being excited with yourself for what you're doing. Now, what are some saving strategies now that we've tackled the debt? We want to start to save, right? What are some saving strategies for anybody at any income level? I think first things first, you've got to automate your savings. All right, you got to get some kind of system in there where you're not seeing those dollars. Get those dollars into your savings account. Get those dollars working for you before you even have to tap into it or deal with it. Get it out of your way. Okay, diversify your savings. That is, while yes, you have your your emergency fund, also have a separate savings account that's just for your personal savings, separate from when all else fails. All right, and then also start to save into things like investment accounts, whether it's 401k, whether it's what is it, an HSA, a health savings account. Any of these different tools, start to save into those tools and really leverage the different tax treatments that any of those could also give you, right? The goal is to diversify all your different saving strategies to give you the best opportunity to have dollars for the long term. And then lastly, wherever possible, aim to get compound or interest return. That's why when I talked about the emergency savings account, I said, put that into a high yield savings account so that it's generating for you some kind of growth on those dollars. You must always have your money working for you, at the very least, to stay ahead of inflation. Okay? Alrighty, so what are your next steps following our conversation today? One, by next week, I want to see more people with their own budgets. If you don't already have a budget, if we don't already have a system for budgeting, I want to see your budget. Okay? Of course, I'm not going to ask you to actually show me your budget, but be honest with yourself. All right? Build yourself a system. Now, next, start your emergency fund. Start opening a high yield savings account. A lot of them are free to open with no minimum savings. Even if you're starting with just $20 a week, even if you're starting with just $50 a week, $100 a week, $100 a month, start with something. Give yourself a goal and then build towards that goal. Devise a strategy if you're tackling your debt, right? List out those debt and then figure out what is what. And then what's my system for tackling each of these? And then lastly, join us again next week, where we're going to be discussing investing for beginners, how to grow your wealth. I'm going to have a guest join us next week, a colleague of mine who's been in the financial planning space for a very long time. I encourage you to private message me with questions you may have. In the description for this, when it posts fully, I'll include a link to my website as well as a link to my my Calendly. So if you want to schedule any consultations or schedule any discussions, I'll be happy to discuss with you and see how we can improve things for you. So again, thank you so much. Thank you to Bobble for giving us a platform, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.